line. So I'm going to kind of use this as our photo behind our headline. So let me go ahead, I need to send this to the back layer. So I'm going to go ahead and lock our background layer again so we don't accidentally send this all the way back. Go back to our main layer. I'm going to right click, arrange, send to back. So there it is, send the background now. And I don't like these harsh edges, so I would like to feather these edges a little bit. So I'm going to go up to, let me see if I can find it. Okay, so effect, stylize, feather. This is a really neat effect I use for photos a lot. I'm going to click on preview so I can see how much is being added, and I'm just going to kind of do 2 inches. Of course, you may have some different sizes. Let's go ahead and click OK. See how it feathers it? Almost looks like it's blended in. That looks wonderful. So I'm going to shift the photo down and maybe shift our headline up just a tad. And I'm actually going to select my headline, all 3 text boxes, and I'm going to right click, or actually I'm going to go up to Object and Group. So now that's 1 unit. I can shift it around and move that higher. And let's see if I can't make that white. There we go. And another thing with type is you can add effects to type, and you can add effects to any object, but this is a great example of how to add maybe a drop shadow to make this pop out over this strong photo. So I'm going to bring out a new panel for you guys, and it's the Appearance panel. And you can go ahead and recall it by going up to Window and clicking on Appearance, and you'll have it. I already have it loaded on one of my boxes. And so we're going to go down to this thing called FX, short for effects. We go and click, and it's going to give us a drop-down menu of a lot of different layer effects we can apply to our text layer. And I am going to go to Stylize, Drop Shadow. You're going to use this a lot. So I have my drop shadow. If you know Photoshop, then you'll be right at home. So I'm going to click on Preview and kind of test out some different offset. So blur, that's going to change. It's going to make it a little bit more blurred. Opacity, I'm going to make it stronger. So I'm going to actually increase the opacity. It goes 1 to 100%. So that's great. Actually, I want to screen it back a little bit more. So I'm going to do 6.6. I play around with the offset. The bigger the offset, the more length it's placed away from the object. So let's do a test. Let's do 1 and 1. So just kind of show you an example. So that offsets it quite a bit. And if you want to blur it, it might have a kind of a neat effect. But let's go ahead and rein it in a little bit. Let me do 0.3. You may have some different numbers because I'm doing it in inches, but you may not be using inches. So just kind of adjust it based on what you have. Make it smaller and bigger and kind of experiment. And you could do the same thing with objects. So if I can get my rectangle tool, we'll go over this in a little bit more detail. I can go to the Appearance, go to FX, and then I can also add a drop shadow to boxes using the same method. So now that has a nice drop shadow to it. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to make this photo a little bit bigger. I want it to go all the way up to the top. And I think it's too strong. I think it's really hard for that white text to pop up over it. So we're going to do something, I'm throwing a lot at you. We're going to go in more detail about this, but I kind of wanted to show you an example first of how to practically apply this. But we're going to change the blending mode on this photo. And a blending mode is a fancy transparency. It's a different way to do a transparency. So we're going to call that up. What's great about the blending mode is you can use the Appearance panel to change the blending mode. So while we're already talking about the FX option down here, we can also talk about the transparency or blending mode options. So if you go down to opacity, you can actually screen back this photo, reduce the opacity. Actually, I got to select my object first. Go up to opacity, and I can reduce it so it's not as strong. And that's exactly what I needed to do. But I actually want to do something even better than this. Because I'm reducing the opacity, but it just looks like it has a transparency on it. It doesn't look, I don't know, I just don't like how the colors are blending. It just looks faded. So I'm going to bring the opacity back to 100%. I'm actually going to, here's where you can change your blending mode. And I got here by going to Appearance and clicking on Opacity. And I'm going to change my blending mode. One of my favorite blending modes to use with photos behind a solid background is one called luminosity. So I'm going to go ahead and click on luminosity. And you'll see it does a transparency, but it makes all the colors the same color of the background photo. So if I wanted to unlock my background photo and I want to change this to yellow, let's go ahead and change it. You can see it changes with the colors, which is super cool. I love it. So let me go back to the purple. And really I can make this any color I want. So let me go double click my fill and make it a little bit brighter. Maybe add a little bit of purple more. Oh, that's too much. But it almost has a duotone look to it, if you've ever heard of duotones in photography. So I love it. So let's go ahead and adjust our headline a little bit. If I ever wanted to remove a drop shadow, let's say I don't like it anymore, I can actually go ahead and click and drag drop shadow down to the trash can icon, and it'll remove the drop shadow for me. And if I want to experiment and maybe, what if I took the eyedropper tool and sampled this blue background text? And what if I made this picture, I guess that's already as bright as it can be. It's one way to do it. But let me go back to white. And this is where we're just going to experiment here with different options. Maybe make the headline a little smaller so you can read it. But I absolutely love this photo. I'm making it bigger so it has a little bit more of an impact on the flyer. But I definitely think this needs to be a different color other than white. We can experiment with black. Does black pop up pretty good? I want it to be in the same blue family. So let's go ahead and click on here. I think that looks great. So we're getting there. We're getting there. But see, now this text is not very readable. Let's go ahead and change this all to bright white, because right now it's on light gray. Let's change that to bright white, see if that helps. And it might help to change the font weight on this a little bit bolder. Let's do extra bold, tighten the spacing, it'd be a little bit more readable. And we could add a drop shadow to this. So I'm going to go to Appearance, FX. Let's add your drop shadow on this one. I do drop shadows constantly to help text kind of show up a little bit better. So that drop shadow really helped it kind of show up, didn't it? I can do the same to this. And another little trick, instead of manually adding the same drop shadow each time for each block of text, I can actually select this one. I can go to Effects. Actually, oh, there it is. It saves the last effect you applied up here. It's actually a little shortcut. So instead of having to do it manually each time, if I want to apply the same drop shadow that I just did to this subheadline, I click on this, go to FX, and it saved it. So apply drop shadow. I could do the same thing for these effects. It's always at the top of your effects panel. It's just a little trick. I'm actually going to go back in my history. I'm going to undo drop shadow for both of those because I don't think that it needs it down here. Let's go ahead and zoom out, take a look at our poster so far, see if we need to finesse it. Let's zoom out, 75%. It's always great to zoom out and see, okay, does it work? Does the blocking work? I think I need to work on my headline a little bit, so I'm going to work on that and come back.